Welcome to NTD News Today. I'm Chris Beers. Here are today's top stories. A mass shooting targeting the Jewish community at Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia left 12 people dead and 29 others injured. Police detain a person of interest in connection to the deadly shooting at Brown University. We have the details on the investigation. Inflation is slowing, but consumers still aren't feeling great about the economy. We unpack the situation with our panel as the midterms elections approach. 2 U.S. soldiers are dead after a suspected ISIS attack in Syria. Arian Pazdar is standing by live with the latest. Ukraine's president is in Germany for this weekend for talks with U.S. and European leaders pushing for peace and Western security guarantees. We'll break down what's at stake. And courage, kindness, and perseverance are the core values of children's author Terry Aslan's new book titled You Can Do Hard Things. We'll speak with him live in studio.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
A shocking shooting in Australia killed 12 people with 29 hospitalized. The incident has been declared a terror attack targeting the Jewish community. A law enforcement source identifies the Bondi Beach gunman as Sydney man Naveed Akram.
I just saw an older lady get shot and she was on the floor. Saw an older guy get shot, very badly injured on the left-hand side.
Well, I must have heard, I don't know, maybe like 40, 50 shots.
It was a Hanukkah event. It was a Jewish event. It was full of grandparents and grandchildren celebrating their religious event together.
A shooting erupted just as a Hanukkah celebration was getting underway with more than 1,000 people in attendance. New South Wales police say officers responded to reports of gunfire around 6:45 p.m. on Sunday local time. 12 people were killed, including one of the 2 suspected gunmen. The second suspect is in critical condition. At least 29 others were injured, among them 2 police officers and a child. Video footage shows a man wrestling with one of the attackers, taking their gun and forcing them to retreat. Authorities have declared the incident a terrorist attack.
I declared this to be a terrorist incident. I've also authorised special powers under Section 5 and Section 6 to ensure that if there is a third offender, and we are currently investigating that at the moment.
A bomb disposal unit has been deployed after police found a vehicle which they believe contained improvised explosive devices.
An attack on Jewish Australians is an attack on every Australian. And every Australian tonight will be, like me, devastated on this attack on our way of life. There is no place for this hate, violence and terrorism in our nation. Let me be clear, we will eradicate it.
Global leaders are reacting to the shooting. Israeli President Isaac Herzog called on the Australian government to take action and, quote, fight against the enormous wave of anti-Semitism in Australia. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron shared condolences after the Bondi Beach shooting. Providence police have detained a person of interest in connection with the Brown University shooting yesterday. The shooting left 2 students dead and another 9 people wounded at the Ivy League. The person of interest was in their 30s. Police did not give details on the investigation. Police have lifted a shelter-in-place order for its campus in Rhode Island. Brown University has canceled all remaining classes, exams, and projects for the rest of the fall semester. The gunman opened fire after entering a building where students were taking exams. The Providence University said that police officers remained in areas still considered an active crime scene. Access to parts of the campus remained restricted on Sunday as police maintained a security perimeter. A Brown University sophomore said she feels frustrated to have endured another campus shooting 7 years after witnessing the Parkland High School shooting.
I think the sadness will set in when we, get all the victims identified and find out who we lost as a community. But right now, I'm just angry that there's kids like me in this country who have had to go through this not once, but twice.
Another student said even though everyone is worried and scared, this could actually be a chance for the whole campus to come together.
I've already seen that, whether it's getting phone calls from friends that I haven't heard from in a year, to reaching out to people who, I maybe have lost contact with. It feels like a very tight-knit environment now, and I can only imagine that that atmosphere will continue throughout this next semester, throughout my time here at Brown. It feels surreal.
Here's President Trump's reaction to the incident on Saturday.
I've been fully briefed on the Brown University situation, what a terrible thing it is. And all we can do right now is pray for the victims and for those that were very badly hurt, it looks like. And we'll inform you later as to what's happening, but it's a shame. It's a shame. Just pray. Thank you very much.
Officials said that of the 9 students taken to the hospital, 7 were in stable condition, 1 was in critical but stable condition, and 1 had been released. Next, how will the economy shape the midterm elections? Overall inflation is down about 6% since the 9% high of the Biden administration, but Pew Research says 3/4 of Americans rate the economy as just fair or poor. Joining me now to discuss is Vance Ginn, former economic advisor to the Office of Budget and Management during President Trump's first term, and Fergus Hodgson, author of Financial Sovereignty for Canadians. Gentlemen, welcome. Vance, let's start with you. Fed Chair Jerome Powell says disinflation appears to be continuing, but Americans still feel pressure in the pocketbook. Who is to blame for this feeling, Republicans or Democrats?
Well, it's a great question. It's good to see that inflation is coming down, or the slowing from 9%, like you said, down to 3%, where we had the Biden inflation of more than 21% during those 4 years during President Biden. Now it is slowing, but it's still too high. And I think what we're feeling is the effects of really the Federal Reserve printing too much money, the supply not catching up. And so we've seen prices exceed or grow faster than what we're typically expecting. And so this really is a failure of Congress to keep spending in check and for the Federal Reserve to rein in the money supply. Until those two things happen, we're going to continue to see massive inflation. And you also see some price increases from the tariffs and the protectionism that's happened under the Trump administration. So a combination of these things has led to this affordability crisis, which I hope that we can start to see pared back quickly because too many families are hurting across the country.
Fergus, same question for you. Who's to blame for the sentiment that the economy isn't doing well? Republicans, Democrats, Congress?
Yeah, I don't like to put such a simplistic culpability on the situation. We both know that both parties, or this is a bipartisan problem. I agree with your other guests that inflation is still too high. And in any other situation or in previous eras, 3% inflation would not be grounds for lowering the interest rates in the economy. So, of course, we have monetized deficits. That's the chief culprit here. We do have, I agree, some inflationary pressure coming from other policies. We could say foreign policy pressure, geopolitical instability. So blame goes around, and it does precede this administration also.
Now, Vance, Powell attributes relatively high inflation mainly to tariffs. Do you agree with this assessment?
No, I mean, overall, when you look at the general level of prices, which is what we measure inflation, like the consumer price index, personal consumption expenditures, those are the general level of prices. Whereas tariffs influence the goods and services that we import, specifically goods. So it's not the general level of prices that changes. So I wouldn't put that all on the back of tariffs. However, it does change relative prices. Certain prices will change, which reduces people's budget constraints that they have. They can't spend as much, so they tend to buy less for other things, which can change the relative prices throughout the economy. So I would actually put the general level of prices, the inflation, on the back of Jerome Powell. And of course, behind that comes the excessive spending by Congress and the massive deficits that we've had of nearly $2 trillion a year. After you monetize that debt, then you're going to see more inflation. Milton Friedman said you have inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. And that's exactly what we're seeing today. So Powell is actually the culprit. He needs to stop blaming others along the way.
All right. And Fergus, Democrats say the midterm elections are going to be about affordability, as they put it. But President Trump calls this a hoax. What's your take?
I agree with them on that assessment. Absolutely, the economy is the chief driver of voter concerns. It's not even close, really. So easily half of voters put cost of living, economic prospects as their top priority, far ahead of immigration, foreign policy, the drug war, and the like. So there's no doubt about that fact.
All right, and Vance, the Federal Reserve just this week announced a 0.25% rate cut. They appeared divided over that decision. What does that tell us about the economy heading into the midterms?
Yeah, Chris, we haven't seen this many who have disagreed. It's usually a consensus. They'll come up with a rate and then they'll all say, yes, we agree. But now there were three. There were two that said we didn't need to cut, two governors. And then there was one who said that they should have cut by 50 basis points instead of 25 basis points. So there is some disagreement here. I would rather them not cut. I think what they really should continue to focus on is the Federal Reserve's balance sheet. It remains about $6.5 trillion, where it was $4 trillion before the COVID shutdowns and lockdowns and everything else. But in fact, what the Fed started to do December 1st was to increase their monetary base, the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve, which is really just the basis of the money supply. So I'm concerned that we're actually, instead of seeing this disinflationary sort of situation, we may see inflationary pressure start to spike again, as we've been seeing over the last few months from increasing in the money supply.
Fergus, what do you make of the divide in the Federal Reserve?
I think it's healthy. There should be some disagreement, or at least some people speaking openly against the current policy. I agree that there should not have been a lowering of the rates. It smacks of pressure in the lead up to the midterms, that some kind of monetary stimulus. There is academic research demonstrating that monetary policy from the Federal Reserve and other central banks is cyclical in favor of the electoral cycle, boosting the incumbent power prior to elections, and that appears to be happening now, unfortunately.
And Vance, President Trump touts, of course, deregulation, oil drilling, trillions of dollars in foreign investment and other policies as wins for the U.S. economy. But consumers, like we said, aren't exactly feeling the effects of these yet. So could consumers feel the effects of these in time for the midterms?
They could. I mean, going into next year, maybe we'll have more certainty about what the economic situation, what the policy situation is going to be. What's really happened since the early part of this year, really from the Liberation Day, when there was this across the board increase in tariffs, taxes on Americans when they import things from different countries, we've seen a lot of businesses freeze. They don't know what their cost structure is going to be. They don't know what their supply chain is going to be. And so this has led to less investment in the economy, less job creation. And in fact, we may be currently in a recession given some of those policies that have slowed down the economy and made us worse off. So that means that if they start to relieve some of those pressures, bring down the tariffs, allow for the tax cuts to be influenced throughout the economy, and the deregulation, which I do think is very important, if those things came to fruition, we would see lower inflation next year, more economic growth, and more job creation. However, it seems like the administration continues to want to double down on more of this protectionist sort of attitude and higher tariffs. If that happens, we will not see the affordability sort of crisis begin to relieve itself because of bad policies that are put in the situation and into the economy.
Fergus, Vance just used the R word, recession, suggesting that we could actually be in one right now. What do you think?
It's so hard to know with the data available, right? And so I don't want to make an assertion on that. I do want to push back a little bit on the tariff situation. There has been messy implementation, and I have to agree that there's been a lot of unpredictability. The challenge is the Trump administration is trying to assert a new Monroe Doctrine, or the Trump corollary, and he's seeking to use trade as a tool in that strategy. So it's going beyond the economy there. It's more of a foreign policy tactic. And it is, like I said, it's a tool that has a price. We're aware of that.
And Vance, what would you say is the president's easiest path to create economic relief for people that they can actually notice by 2026?
I think it'd be a combination of three things. One, continue this deregulation path, because that's going to open up the supply side of the economy and allow for prices to have more downward pressure on them across the economy. I think they should also focus on less government spending, especially deficit spending. If they could do that, that would also contribute to less monetization by the Fed and putting more money supply in the economy. And then finally, I think they should start to roll back the tariffs and this more protectionist sort of rhetoric, and instead focus on free trade, especially with our allies, and instead of putting higher and higher costs of importing from them. And that, all those things would reduce this increasing pressure on inflation over the next year.
Gentlemen, in closing here, I just want to hear from both of you on this last question. Fergus, of course, you're not a pollster, but you have a unique view on the election. So which party do you think will perform better on the economy in 2026?
Gosh, I don't. That's a broad question. In terms of the actual outcome, I follow the betting markets closely, and it does seem clear that the Republicans will hold the Senate and maybe lose the House.
All right, and Vance, same question for you.
During midterms, you usually have the opposing party that's not in power. They usually will win some seats, especially if this affordability issue doesn't go away and the Trump administration can't get a hold of this inflation throughout the economy. It's going to be really tough for Republicans to keep the Senate or the House going into next year. So they've got a lot of work to do between now and then.
All right, Vance Ginn, president of Ginn Economic Consulting, and Fergus Hodgson, director of Econ Americas. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next, recent electoral victories have given Democrats increasing hope of taking back one and perhaps both houses of the U.S. Congress in next year's midterm elections. But a new Reuters Ipsos poll suggests that some of that enthusiasm may be premature.
We have toppled a political dynasty.
Across, Democrats enjoyed electoral victories.
Tonight, we sent a message.
Thanks to candidates leveraging concerns about the economy and President Donald Trump's overall unpopularity. But as Reuters politics editor Scott Malone explains, a new Reuters Ipsos poll shows Democrats may still have a lot of work to do to win over a crucial voting bloc ahead of the midterm elections. Our polling found that voters 50 and over favored Republicans by about 46% to 38%. Voters under 50 preferred Democrats by 42% to 31%. And that's an important finding because voters 50 and up are also a lot more likely to turn out in midterm election years. Malone says the strong Republican lead marks a major change from past midterm election cycles, which are held midway through a president's term. Not only in the current cycle are voters 50 and over favoring Republicans by a significant margin, compared to younger voters, they're also favoring Republicans by a significant margin compared to where they were at this point in the last two election cycles. If you go back to 2018 cycle, which was the midterm of Trump's first term, at this point in time, 50 and up voters were actually narrowly preferring Democrats. Democrats need a net gain of 3 seats to win back control of the House and a net gain of 4 seats to take the Senate.
Your comfort depends on where you live. Here are 9 of the 50 largest U.S. cities where you can live comfortably on an $80,000 salary. According to a September analysis from personal finance site Go Banking Rates, a household income of $80,000 is enough to live comfortably in just 9 of the nation's 50 largest cities, including Wichita, Kansas, and Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Bump that up to $90,000, and a family can live comfortably in 17 of the biggest U.S. cities, including cities like San Antonio, Texas, and Jacksonville, Florida. Next, 2 U.S. soldiers and 1 interpreter are dead after an attack in Syria. President Trump, the Pentagon, and others are already responding. Let's now bring in our international correspondent, Arian Pazdar. Arian, what's the latest on this situation, and how is the president reacting?
Hey Chris, good to see you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, you're right. 2 US Army soldiers and 1 interpreter are dead after an attack in Syria. Now, just as a reminder to our viewers, the current Syrian government is one that is friendly to the United States. Now, after the Saturday attack, President Trump took to social media. He says, and I quote here, "This was an ISIS attack against the United States and against Syria in a very dangerous part of Syria that is not fully controlled by the Syrian government." Now, this attack, Chris, comes barely a month after the new Syrian government signed a cooperation agreement with a delegation that is led by the United States. And the goal of this agreement is exactly to combat ISIS. As a matter of fact, the new Syrian president actually visited the White House and met with President Trump at around the same time when this cooperation agreement was signed. Now, after the Saturday attack, President Trump spoke to media. Let's take a look at what he said about the attack and about Syria's reaction.
The new president of Syria is, as they told me, and as I'm not surprised, he's devastated by what happened. This was an ISIS attack on us and Syria.
Mr. President, will the U.S. retaliate against ISIS?
Yeah, we will.
So, Chris, President Trump says the U.S. will respond, but so far he didn't elaborate on that. Chris?
Right, Arian. Now, we just heard from President Trump. Are other officials reacting as well? What are they saying?
Yeah, Chris, other officials are weighing in as well. So first, let's start with the Pentagon here. A Pentagon spokesman says that, and I quote here again, the attack occurred as the soldiers were conducting a key leader engagement. Their mission was in support of ongoing counter-ISIS terrorism operations in the region. So they were actually going against ISIS when those two soldiers were targeted by what is believed to be an ISIS fighter. Right? And then the spokesman also added that the soldiers' names are being withheld for now until 24 hours, of course, after the next of kin notification. Now, what I think is interesting here, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, he had stronger words. He issued a very stern warning to other potential attackers. So Hegseth, first he started off saying that the savage who perpetrated this attack, he was killed by partner forces, so the attacker is dead. But then Hegseth went on to say that, let it be known, if you target Americans anywhere in the world, you will spend the rest of your brief, anxious life knowing the United States will hunt you, find you, and ruthlessly kill you. So in my opinion, that's a pretty strong warning from the Secretary of War. I think he wants to make sure that such attacks don't happen again, right? It's a warning from him to people in this region and across the globe. Lastly, I just want to add here real quick, Chris, that a Syrian spokesman, he actually says that they're still trying to find out if the attacker was actually part of ISIS or if it was just a lone gunman who subscribes to the same ideas as ISIS, and if they want to find out if he's actually part of the organization. Chris?
All right, Arian, thank you so much. Next, White House border czar Tom Homan says tighter security at the U.S.-Mexico border is pushing smugglers to try new routes, including by sea. Homan made the comments during a news conference yesterday along the border that separates San Diego and Mexico.
We knew when we lock the border down, they're going to take to the water. So President Trump has not only signed more Coast Guard boats to the water, more Navy vessels to the water, but air and marine operations down on the end. They put more watercraft in. We will not rest until we make sure every public safety threat, illegal alien in this country is removed.
The shift comes as U.S. military increases maritime activity. This year alone, there have been more than 20 U.S. strikes in the Caribbean and Pacific waters targeting vessels suspected of drug smuggling. Roughly 90 people have been killed. It's raising concerns among human rights advocates and sparking debate in Congress. At the same time, Washington is ramping up on immigration crackdowns in major cities like Chicago, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C. The Department of Homeland Security says more than 600,000 people have been deported since President Trump took office. It puts the administration on pace for less than 700,000 deportations by the end of this year. Coming up, Ukraine's president is in Germany this weekend for talks with U.S. and European leaders pushing for peace and Western security guarantees. We'll break down what's at stake after the break right here on NTD News Today. Ukraine's president arrived in Germany as new diplomatic efforts get underway to bring an end to the war with Russia. Volodymyr Zelensky is meeting with U.S. envoys and European leaders pushing for what he calls a dignified peace and long-term security guarantees for Ukraine. He landed in Berlin earlier today as talks began involving Ukrainian officials, U.S. representatives, and European allies. Zelensky says any peace deal must ensure Russia cannot attack Ukraine again. Ahead of the meetings, Zelensky confirmed Ukraine is willing to drop its long-standing bid to join NATO, which is a major shift for the country. This in exchange for Western security guarantees. Ukraine's push for NATO membership has been written into its constitution and seen as protection against future Russian aggressions. While details of the talks remain limited, a U.S. official says Special Envoy to the Middle East Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are going to Germany to speak with Ukrainian and European leaders. The German chancellor is hosting Zelensky and other European leaders for a summit in Berlin tomorrow, the latest show of support from Ukraine's allies. Meanwhile, Zelensky condemned recent Russian strikes on Ukrainian ports, calling them a challenge to the international community. Ukrainian officials say Russia hit 2 ports Friday, damaging 3 Turkish-owned vessels, including one carrying food supplies. Staying on Ukraine, the country announced that Belarus released 114 prisoners over the weekend. Kyiv's Prisoners of War Coordination Center says those freed will receive medical care, and Belarusian citizens who choose to leave will be transported to Poland and Lithuania. The Israeli military announced on Saturday that it's killed a Hamas commander, one of the architects of the October 7th attack. Hamas Gaza chief confirmed on Sunday the killing. Here's the story.
The Israel Defense Forces said they successfully targeted Ra'ad Saad. They also identified him as the head of weapons production for Hamas and one of the last remaining veteran senior militants in the Gaza Strip. In their own statement, Hamas's media wing did not confirm Saad's death, but said a civilian vehicle had been hit in Gaza City. Hamas accused Israel of undermining the ceasefire agreement in the Gaza Strip, which went into effect in October. Both sides have repeatedly accused the other of violations since the ceasefire began 2 months ago.
Gunfire was heard in Thailand's southeastern Trat province on Saturday night as fighting with Cambodia spread to coastal areas of a disputed border region. Thailand's leader vowed to keep fighting and announced a curfew in Trat province on Sunday. The military had previously imposed a curfew in the eastern Sakyo province, which remains in force. Here are the details.
Thailand has not reached a ceasefire agreement with Cambodia, and the Thai military will continue fighting on the disputed border. Caretaker Thai Prime Minister Anutin Charnvirakul told reporters on Saturday. His comments came as Thai fighter jets struck targets hours after U.S. President Donald Trump said he had brokered a new ceasefire. Cambodia's government released videos on Saturday showing damage to 2 bridges. Cambodia's defense ministry stated on Telegram that Thai forces had struck bridges and buildings overnight and fired artillery from a naval vessel. Cambodia and Thailand have been exchanging heavy weapons fire along the 508-mile border since December 8th, and some of the heaviest fighting since a 5-day clash in July. The Thai army released photographs Saturday showing injured people and damaged buildings. A Thai Defense Ministry spokesman said on Saturday clashes had taken place across 7 border provinces and that Cambodia had fired heavy weapons, quote, making it necessary for Thailand to retaliate. Hundreds of thousands of people on both sides of the border have been displaced since the fresh fighting broke out.
Coming up, a Fortune 500 director turned children's author joins us in studio to discuss his new book. Stay tuned. You Can Do Hard Things. That's the title of the latest children's book by Fortune 500 director turned children's author Terry Aslan. His book tells the story of a teacher named Miss Emma and her family and reminds us about the importance of courage and kindness. Terry joins us now in studio to chat about his new book. Terry, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate you having me here today.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure. So what inspired you to write this book?
So the book was inspired for myself, was inspired by my late wife, Patricia Aslan. She was a kindergarten teacher, mom, for kindergarten teacher for over 30 years. And she had a number of life lessons that she would teach to her 5-year-olds and to our children. And part of that was, one of her favorite things was she taught to her kids every single day, you can do hard things. And that kind of just stuck with those kids. She would have kids that would graduate from high school and come back and be part of her life. And so, Mrs. Aslan, I remember you telling me I can do hard things. And so her services was based around that topic and had testimonies and so forth. But so I was looking for a way to honor her. I've had most of my life is obviously in the business world and the medical world and different things. But I started playing around with some wording, and lo and behold, I came up with a book, and here I am today.
And it's meant to honor your wife.
Absolutely, yeah. It's meant to honor her legacy, but also it's a timely message. As going through this, we have a 3-year-old grandson, and trying to explain to him his Nana and what she was going through, because she battled for 7 years. And particularly the last number of months were really tough. So we, not only just to honor her, but something that parents can have a discussion with their children about. And it doesn't have to be particularly that, but we all, doesn't matter who we are, we all go through hard things in life, and having a perspective of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know this book uses the C word,
Yes,
cancer.
absolutely, it does. Yes, and so we, myself and my publicist went back and forth and said, and quite honestly, I said, should I put that in there? And she said, I remember she said, absolutely. She said, if we're going to write this book, and you're writing this book, and you're being very honest about it, said, kids need to, because kids know what that is, but parents don't always know how to explain it. And my book, I believe, helps with that. But it's also a generational book that can be passed down as well. So.
Yeah, and I feel like kids are so often underestimated. I mean, they can handle difficult conversations if their parents guide them through it well.
Absolutely, Chris, and that's such a good point. It's one of the things my wife would always say with the 5-year-olds. She would say, parents underestimate what they can grasp and what they can do. So she always pushed them out to the out to the edge, and the same with the book, and talking about the struggles and how you feel and the grief and so forth, but it's broken down. It's in a very simple terms that parents can use.
Yeah, it sounds like you're providing a tool to parents. Now, as I was researching your book, I learned that you were in international sales, Fortune 500 director, and now you're a children's author.
It's you never know where you're going to land in life. Early on in my career, I was in medical sales, and fortunately opened up new markets all across the world, and had that opportunity to travel. And my late wife, Pat, she would travel with me during the summers when she was off before we had children. And then later in life, when I was worked for a Fortune 500 company, much more on the operations side. And so that's kind of where I landed. And then after my wife got to a point, about October-ish of last year, I kind of set things aside just to focus on the two of us. And now, with the book written, and kind of feel like she's back.
Yeah, and I know you lost your wife in February, and I'm sorry for your loss.
I appreciate that, Chris.
Yeah, and it's incredibly brave of you to get up here to tell her story. I mean, it's not even a year, right?
Not even a year.
It's so important to be able. I mean, for you, I'm sure, to be able to do that.
It is, and grief comes in so many different manners, and there is not one way to handle it is standard for people. But for myself, it's this helped me heal, and I just wanted to pass that along. I don't want to keep it for myself. And it's a book. It's a book about courage. It's about kindness, and it's about resiliency.
Yeah, such important messages today in this world. I mean, There's so many things that we need resilience for, that we need kindness for. So just in the last 30 seconds, Terry,
yes.
What do you hope children whose parents read this book to them, take away from it?
You know, what I hope is that the kids get a grasp and understanding that within themselves they have that ability to overcome hard things. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a death, it doesn't necessarily have to be something, but we will face hard things. But that repetitive motto or phrase, that's what I hope, that someday when they grow up and say, I can do this, and I can do it well. So,
yeah. And we all need that message. I mean, no matter what age you're at, no matter how many hard things you've encountered,
I'm telling you,
you got to remember that you can do it.
Absolutely.
All right, Terry Aslan, thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Next, coming up, Australian runner Catherine Drysdale made history in Antarctica, becoming the ice marathon's first female champion. She called it the toughest run of her life. I bet it was. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Australian runner Catherine Drysdale achieved a historic first at the bottom of the world on Saturday, becoming the Antarctic Ice Marathon's first female champion in the 20th edition of the race. Drysdale, a 35-year-old portfolio manager from Sydney, crossed the finish line with a winning time of 3 hours, 48 minutes, 43 seconds.
It feels so good to be here, and the support is amazing. Like, the people at the aid stations and the encouragement along the way are just an awesome event. So I'm buzzing. I'm freezing cold.
The world's southernmost marathon saw athletes from 20 countries complete an exhausting 26 miles, which was staged at Union Glacier, some 600 miles from the South Pole.
It's so hard. Wow. Oh my God, that is unlike anything I've ever done. I've done marathons before, but that is so tough. So tough. It's like every time I was suffering, I'm like, come on, you're running in Antarctica. And sometimes it helped. And sometimes I just couldn't pull myself out of that suffering.
What to do for the holidays? We all have our traditions, and in a social media push, the wives of White House cabinet members decided to share some of what makes the season special. Here's more.
Hi, I am Cheryl Hines. I am married to Robert Kennedy Jr., who is the Secretary of HHS. We have a very big family, so the holidays is a really fun time for us, and we like to have a talent show. Not everybody's as talented as they wish they were, but it doesn't stop us from singing at the top of our lungs or doing some crazy dance, but we always have a really good time together.
My name is Marlo Greer, and my husband is Jameson Greer, the U.S. Trade Representative. And my favorite holiday tradition is dancing in the Nutcracker with my young son and daughter. We love to practice at our home and then to dance around and perform each year.
My name is Allison Lutnick, and my husband is Howard Lutnick, the Secretary of Commerce. My favorite holiday tradition is lighting Hanukkah candles with my children. They're approaching 30 now, so we don't do chocolate dreidels or 8 nights of gifts anymore, though.
My name is Lisa Collins. My husband is Douglas Collins. He is the Secretary of Veterans Affairs. And our favorite holiday tradition is collecting Christmas ornaments. Everywhere we have been in 37 years have a special tree for those places, and they're all dated as a remembrance of where we've been and how far we've come.
So my name is Jeanette Rubio. My husband is Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State. I would say that our family tradition is we, as a family, we go to midnight mass. That's something that's very important to us. We celebrate it together because we want to keep what the purpose of Christmas is.
I'm Catherine Burgum, and I'm the wife of Secretary of the Interior, Doug Burgum. And our favorite holiday tradition is making lefse. And some people don't have any idea what that is, but that's actually a Norwegian flatbread. That's a tradition around the holidays.
My favorite traditions are cutting the Christmas tree down, which we do live every year on the weekend after Thanksgiving usually, and that's always a big family event. And the other thing is during Advent, every night we turn down the lights and we light candles, the candle for each week. and we sang O Come Emmanuel together. And the kids, especially when they're little, just love it. The lights are down, the candles are going, and again, it's a moment where we come together in prayer, and it's so special, and the music, that it's just, again, another reminder of why we do what we do, which is Christmas is about Jesus' birth.
That's all for today's news. Thank you for tuning in. Stay with us for the NTD Evening News at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific.